playing, Harry. I think we're live.
What's happening, people? Welcome back to Skype's First Talk for episode 2 of our weekly shows. Today, I'll be joined by Ben when we can see him, and I done a bit like I done last week, but in a different sense. I went live without realising I went. This time I was talking to Ben, thinking I was live, and didn't press the live button. So. Yeah, hopefully we'll get Ben back in a minute. But for now, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. That'd be appreciated, free of cost. And if you like it, leave a like. And remember, if you're watching it after, it is live. So let's see if we can get Ben back. But for the meantime,
Hello.
I am going to continue. Hello, Ben. We can hear you, but we can't see
Hello.
you.
Hello. Nice to see you. How are you?
Nice to see you. So yeah, Ben is my guest for today. So yeah, Ben, how are you?
Yeah, I'm brilliant. How are you? Other than the curse that is Tottenham Hotspur, but generally I'm okay.
Yeah, very good. Good to hear. Pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure to be here.
So you got some comments already coming in. Jude says, "Yo, can I come on next week?" Jude, DM me after the show, and we can sort that. Coach's Corner says, "Hi, hello, thank you for tuning in." And Luke says, "Big up, Harry." Hi, Luke. Appreciate it.
Big up, Luke.
Is another co-host with me and founder of Park Lane Podcast, which I do every Saturday. So thank you, Luke. Massive big up to Luke. Got lots of comments coming in, so appreciate guys. Keep it coming. So Ben, let's go. Let's start with the post-match thoughts with Leicester. Typical Spurs, isn't it? We go from like a really real high against Manchester City to probably what I think is our best performance. Correct me if I'm wrong. Best performance of the season to probably our worst performance of the season, and even with Conte coming back and then losing 4-1 to Leicester. So if you can, what's your initial thoughts about the game?
Oh, just summed Spurs up, didn't it? Yeah, it was just went from absolutely amazing to absolutely terrible in the space of a week. It just summed Tottenham Hotspur up, really. I mean, I think a problem we have in a lot of these, or I should say, the good thing we have in a lot of the big games, I do say that we've not done very well against the top teams, maybe particularly City, is when we've really got our backs against the wall and we just sit off and defend, we've generally done okay. If you think Anfield last season, where we drew 1-1, but I think a lot of games this season and the past couple of years, when we've really got to actually properly go for it and don't have Romero in that side, we just can't play out from the back. And it just leads to error after error after error after error. And I think it's becoming a real issue that they need to address in the transfer windows with centre-backs with better quality on the ball.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. And do you think we really missed Romero on Saturday? Because we saw against
100%.
City the difference. You got a clean sheet against City, touch-tight defending, and you got what looked like a bunch of championship statues against Leicester. So how much of a difference would you say Romero makes to the Spurs team?
It's unbelievable how much of a difference he makes. Not to the same extent, but similar to Van Dijk at Liverpool when he first came in. Obviously not this season, but for the past couple of years, he just makes everybody around him 10 times better. And I think Romero is very similar to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. And another interesting one is Pedro Porro, a player that all us fans, probably including me and you, Ben, wanted from the very start of the window. He's our player. We got him at the end of the day. Only took 30 days, but no, we got him. And we were all excited to see, and probably unexpectedly, I would say, saw his name on the team sheet. I certainly didn't expect it. Then about you, Ben.
No, neither.
What do you, if I may ask, what do you make of his debut? Obviously, he was thrown in there unexpectedly by Conte. I'll give my opinion after that. I think it was wrong, but yeah, what do you make of his initial debut? Bearing in mind the defence he's playing with alongside.
I feel it was a typical case of new league syndrome. And if you see a lot of the things he was criticised for, particularly by Tim Sherwood, who I thought was very harsh on Soccer Saturday, is he just got caught on the ball too many times, thinking he had more time than he was going to have, which you may have in another league, but I think he'll quickly learn. I noticed this when Bentancur came in. He had a bit of this for the first couple of games. And I think it happens with a lot of new players coming into the Premier League, that they just don't, they think they've got a lot more time than they've got. And they take a couple games to adjust to that, or caught out of possession quite a lot to begin with. And I think it was basically a victim of that, pretty much.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you, Ben. Yeah, made very good points there. And I think personally, again, say if you disagree with me, but I think that personally it was wrong throwing him in there. As much as I want to see Porro flourishing in a Spurs shirt, starting every game first choice right wing back, you can't ignore the fact that Emerson has stepped up recently and fought for his position. At times he's been really poor, I would say, this season, but he's played. But now he stepped up and he got dropped, which surprised him. And surely you would introduce a new signing from the bench. Not throwing him into a big Premier League game like against Leicester. Leicester have great attacking players in Tielemans, Maddison, Barnes, Iheanacho in form. It's never going to be easy. So would you, was that a silly decision by Conte? Would you say to throw Porro in there, and would you have done that?
I think it's a difficult one. I think it may have been different if we weren't playing AC Milan so quick, and it being AC Milan, because I've got a feeling he's going to pick Emerson tomorrow, which is why he's played Porro, because he doesn't want Emerson playing so many games in quick succession. So I think it's slightly part due to that. Also, maybe he thought, which I agree with, Porro was more suited to a game like Leicester, when we would have expected to have more of the ball and play. Obviously, that didn't end up happening, but before the game, you would have expected that. So I think it was a victim of that. And him picking Emerson tomorrow was partly why he threw Porro in. But it's a difficult one, because it's quite easy to say in hindsight, was it a bad decision or not? But at the end of the day, we'll never know how it would have gone the other way around. So it's a difficult one.
Yeah, very good point. But I actually didn't think about that with Emerson. Thought about AC Milan, to be honest with you. Personally, I would have started with Emerson, want to see Porro to thrown in there and probably introduce him from a bench. But anyway, and going on to that, another surprise shock to the team news was probably seeing Tanganga starting after injury problems. Hasn't played many games at all. Were you surprised by any chance to see his name on the team sheet?
Yeah, I was quite surprised, considering particularly how Sanchez last season, when Romero was out injured for a long time, Sanchez was very much the number one that played every game for a long run. I was very surprised to see Tanganga. I know there were some rumours of him leaving. I don't want to throw any accusations out, but I just wonder, had there been maybe an argument? I could be making that totally up, and it could have just been he wanted to pick Tanganga for some reason that we'll never know, because we aren't seeing them training or don't have Amazon Prime documentary cameras that we'll see footage of. So we'll never know. But that's the only thing I can think of, but I doubt that's the case. So I don't know, to be honest. But I was surprised to see that happen.
Yeah, you make a really good point, Ben. I was certainly surprised by it. I think we touched on this on Potline podcast. We did Saturday about how none of us feel comfortable with Sanchez, but it's probably what made sense. I don't think any of us expected to see Tanganga in there. We talked about the possibility of Dyer moving over and having a back three of Dyer, Davis, and Lenglet. I don't think any of us, certainly not me anyway, even thought about the prospect of Tanganga starting, expecting to be involved in the matchday squad, but strange throwing him in there. And as much as I hate to say it, I don't think he's ready. Whether he'll ever be ready is a completely other question, but I don't think he's ready to play at such a high level. Obviously, got lots of injury problems. But one thing that was the case is Conte was back on the touchline against Leicester. And I personally thought that would have a positive effect. I thought the performance against City was almost like we played for the manager, played for Conte. It's strange because it's the same starting 11, but obviously Conte was there. So I think us fans thought, "Oh, great, Conte's back." But question for you, Ben: do you think Conte's come back too early? Do you think he's rushed himself back?
I don't think so. I think it was just a bad coincidence, if I'm honest, because I don't think it would have made much of a difference if Stellini was there, because from what I heard in the press conference, Conte was giving them thoughts throughout the game anyway, so it's not like it was a different idea because he wasn't there or something. So I think it was just a victim of coincidence. I don't think there's a massive correlation between him being there and him not. I did hear that apparently he wasn't as animated and had to sit down for large parts of the game because he still wasn't feeling comfortable. So hopefully he feels better as quickly as possible. But in terms of our performance, I don't think it really would have made much of a difference either way.
Yeah, do you know, 100%. Yeah, I think I agree with you. However, Conte, obviously, yeah, he didn't look that animated from the match day highlights that I saw. He looked a bit pale. I think personally, he's in love with the game and he just can't help himself. Perhaps he should take time off because much as I love him to be here, there's no point being here if he's not in the best of states. But surely, Ben, he would have had a say. Or at least pick that team against Manchester City. So it was strange because we go from the result aside, the performance probably our best of the season, I would say, against City to the worst, probably against Leicester. Why do you think that is? That I know obviously we're Tottenham, but we were so good against City, and then less than a week later we play like that against Leicester. What's the reason do you think behind that? Because obviously we've got lots of injury problems, but surely it isn't just that. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one because, to be honest, you said we're Tottenham, which is a bit of a reason, but I've got to be honest, I've thought of it for why it happens for so many years, and I still can't really put my finger on it. But I do believe part of it is we are very suited to playing against City compared to a lot of other teams, which I know people might say, oh, yeah, but look in the big games like against Arsenal or whoever this season where we've been absolutely rubbish. But we just seem to have a knack against City. And over the years, I mean, we're pretty much their bogey team if you look at recent results. And I think the problem was without Romero in that team. I know you can say, oh, injuries, but I think it being Romero of everybody in terms of our build-up play to try and get at Leicester was just non-existent. And I think, yeah, it's a very difficult one. Would it have been massively different if he was there? I don't think it would have been like we played against City, but I think it would have been a bit better than it was. I'm not sure we would have won still because just from some of the errors that Dyer made, for example, on that Iheanacho goal. Yeah, I don't know really, if I'm honest.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Yeah, again, make some good points. So we will get into Conte's future, whether you're out about it and how you're feeling. Because obviously that's a bit of a shock defeat, and we've struggled, let's say, since the World Cup, certainly in terms of results. But this is all about the preview for Milan. But before we do get into it, I would like to talk about our injury problems, which is a huge problem, whether it's the excuse. Some people may say, oh, it's the excuse, but we do have some major injury problems. And breaking news in the last few minutes before, just as we're going on air, that Alistair Gold has announced that. Oh, sorry, got the wrong one there. Alistair Gold announced about Basuma. Basuma is now out for bigger expected time than initially expected. Here it is. Yeah, Tottenham now expect Basuma to be out for about 7 to 8 weeks. That was breaking news as we're going on air. Originally, I think it was about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 weeks. But yeah, it just seems to go bad to worse, doesn't it, Ben, for Tottenham?
Yeah, it's amazing to think. Before Man City, we had a fully fit squad, and now we're just getting injury after injury after injury. It's just amazing how you can go from a fully fit squad in a week to having like 5 key players injured.
Yeah, I know. I think we've personally been unlucky. I think lots of teams have suffered from injury problems this season. This is our period, I think, of injury problems, but we seem to get it all at once. And what's frustrating, Ben, for me, is that we went, going into that game in such good form. Team was all right, and start of the week, you go full squad. Stellini actually said, we've got a full squad. So that's what frustrates me the most. But yeah, those injury woes are a problem. Obviously, you now got like the likes of Lloris out, likes of add one on if I miss one, but you now got Lloris, like the likes of Basuma, the likes of Sessegnon. It was announced, I think Alistair Gold also announced after the game, Sessegnon is set to miss at least 6 weeks with a new hamstring injury. I mean, that puts pressure on Perisic to miss every game. But the one I really want to talk about, Ben, the big one that I think will affect us the most is Rodrigo Bentancur. Obviously, he went down, and it didn't look good, did it, when he went down?
No.
There was talks of ACL.
A lot of pain.
Yeah, a lot of pain, and lots of people were concerned, like myself. People said, but what I don't get is this on the medical team, or is he just really, really tough? But he actually walked off, which made fans like me think, oh, perhaps he's okay because he actually walked off himself, which is quite concerning. It could be an ACL. But Bentancur will miss the rest of the season, as on average expected 6 to 7 months recovery after ACL injury. That has been confirmed. I think it'd be a huge miss. So how much of a miss do you think Bentancur will be to this Spurs team, Ben?
Massive. I mean, if you think in that period we didn't have him, what was it, after the World Cup, for quite a few games, we took a while to get back into things after the World Cup. I think before Fulham, which is I think when he came back in, I could be wrong, we looked totally lost in games like Villa, Brentford, where he didn't play. And I really, really worry that something's going to have to change for us to get back onto the track of last season. And I think these injuries are just hitting us further back and back. And don't get me wrong, everyone has to cope with injuries. But I think when we don't have such a big squad, it affects us a bit more than other teams.
Yeah, absolutely well said. And our stats do say that our results, our form is much better with Bentancur in the team. Obviously, you've got Højbjerg as well suspended for Milan, which we will get into. But first, I want to get into a bit of discussion, which I think at the start of the week we didn't expect to be discussing this about Conte in or Conte out. Before I ask you where you stand with this, Ben, I would just like to say that I think I can understand it's a bad defeat to Leicester. Obviously, we've lost lots of games, but I think there has been quite a bit overreaction from the fans talking about how Conte out after one loss. Went into that game, it was such confidence. Obviously, it's a really, really bad loss, but I think you've got to respect the fact where Conte has taken us since he took over. We're still, in the Champions League, round of 16 the FA Cup, and we're still fifth in the league. Performances and results like that aren't acceptable, regardless of injury problems, and I accept that. But I think you've sometimes got to respect this Conte, who's an elite manager and a proven winner, who I believe, if given the right tools, and he's backed. I don't believe that window's backed. I believe it's good. But people think spending money has been backed, right? I don't think that managers at this football club have been backed, and Conte, I think, is another victim of that. So I think people got to wake up to the fact that Conte, wherever he's been, has won trophies. We had this similar discussions under Mourinho, and to judge him after one game, he's had a difficult year. And again, people say it's an excuse, but losing, trust me, you try losing lots of friends, and now having surgery, the gallbladder removed, is tough. And I think if you, for example, you look at that defence and look at the team that he has to deal with and personal situations he has to deal with. So I'm personally Conte in, and the reason I brought this up is because it's been a big discussion, like on Twitter this week. It's been just big discussion on the news, but mainly Twitter. So I can't see, I don't know about you, Ben, but I can't see where these conversations are coming from after one game. Personally, I think we've been poor after the World Cup, but I think it's wrong to start talking about Conte out. What do you think?
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think it's a ridiculous suggestion that we shouldn't keep Conte as our manager if we're going to back him. But the problem is, are we going to back him? And he is the type of manager that needs to be backed, or it doesn't really work out massively. So part of me wonders, are we wasting our time? The thing is, it's all based on things we don't know. So it's very difficult to say. If he's backed 100% Conte in, I know people will say, oh, Poch did better. We got to a Champions League final with Poch, etc. But we had Vertonghen and Alderweireld playing in that season. We got to the Champions League final, and years before was with those. And we had Eric Dyer and Ben Davies on the bench. we've replaced them with Eric Dyer and Ben Davis, who were Poch's number twos. Well, Davis was more of a left back then, but they were the players Poch didn't really want to use then, and they're now our first choice players other than Romero. So I think, and also people say Dyer, Jose had Dyer and we did XYZ. We lost to Dinamo Zagreb with Dyer and Sanchez at the back. That was a big game we lost. So saying, oh, managers XYZ should have done better, is that, have managers really done that much better with these players? Maybe for a little run which we had last season, but it always comes back to the same cycle. So I think Conte in, if you're going to back him. If you're not going to back him and we're just going to accept sort of not having world-class ready-made players, then he's got to go for somebody else.
Yeah, I agree, Ben. And again, I think make very valid, very good, actually, points. Do you think that him not putting pen to paper and signing the contract has an impact on whether, like, for example, in January, perhaps if they went out and got a centre-back, or the fact that perhaps the players aren't giving 110%, like against Leicester, for example? Would you say that some of our problems and talk is to do with Conte not putting pen to paper? And where do you stand? Do you feel more sorry, like, for the board that Conte's not putting pen to paper and they don't want to back him, which I can understand if he's not putting pen to paper? Or do you see it in Conte's view, whereas why should I put pen to paper if I'm not being backed like previous managers, because they haven't been? So where do you stand on that?
I think it's a difficult one because I know there was some, I don't know how reliable it was, but there was some murmur in the summer that Bastoni didn't want to come because of Conte's uncertain future. But I feel if we got in a situation where we're negotiating for top players like Bastoni, etc., while it might not be announced or there'll be rumours of it, I think if we're in that position where they're being negotiated and Conte gets the get-go that they're willing to properly go for a player, not just talk for ages, I think he will tell that player and that agency that if this gets through, he is going to stick around. So that's why I'm not sure it's as much of an issue as people say. Don't get me wrong, it's not ideal, because to have your manager penned down to a long contract is brilliant, but I feel it's not as much of an issue as people make it out to be, because if we're in the position where we're going to sign a player, I think Conte will say to them in private, I am going to stay, which would then make them stay. So it's a very difficult one, if I'm honest. I don't want to sit on the fence, because I feel that's the easy option, but I don't know.
Yeah, you make very good valid points again. So yeah, fair enough. I'd like to touch on. I don't know if you're still here, but I'd like to touch on an earlier comment that Jude made. He said that Conte had a shambles on Saturday and Porro was a shamble. I'd like to focus on the first bit, saying Conte had a shamble on Saturday. And I'd like to say first that I think Conte got tactically outclassed Saturday. I'm not having a dig at him, but I thought we had got tactically outclassed. But I'm going to give credit to Brendan Rodgers for that. I think he came here with a game plan and delivered it, and everything seemed to go right for Leicester. Even we took the lead, and then the still came back. And I think that scoreline could have been bigger. For example, there was talk about whether their goal should be allowed or not. So I'll ask you what you think in a minute, Ben. But leading on, kind of talking about that comment and sticking with the Conte discussion, what I have a problem with is not just Conte, but elite managers like Conte. I don't think they can accept their mistakes, or come out and say, we got this wrong, or make the right substitution to accept that he's got it wrong. I don't think Conte will ever admit that he's got something wrong. Now I question where that plan B is against Leicester, for example. Going back to, let's try and find it again, Jude's comment about Porro was a shamble, for example. I would put that on Conte, because it was a 2-on-1 for what I saw on Match of the Day, 2-on-1 for most of the game against Porro. And as a manager, you've surely got to do something about that. Whether it's drop Kulusevski deeper, put Emerson and Porro on, put them both that side, but both deeper. You've got to change some kind of formation. And he's obsessed with his formation. He's obsessed with his tactics, obsessed with the team, and doesn't want to change it. And when he makes substitutions, it seems to be all at once. So I want to know your thoughts, Ben, about Conte Plan B. One, do you think he has a Plan B? And two, if he doesn't, how much of an issue is that?
It's difficult. I feel with your point regarding substitutions, I feel yes, he can take a while to make subs. In my opinion, it's a difficult one. I think Tanganga needed to come off early on in the second half. Not necessarily that he did. Well, I'm not saying he was good. I'm not saying he was absolutely shocking. I just feel with him there next to a new player in the league like Porro, I just feel it was a bit of a disaster waiting to happen. In terms of there was whenever one of the two of them got on the ball, there was just a bit of anxiety. You could feel it in the way they were on the ball. You could tell that there wasn't the sort of calmness that we have in games when you've got, say, Romero there. I'm not saying it was particularly either's fault. I think it was just, it didn't help that a lot of mistakes happened very early on in the game, which then meant that they were all panicking that little bit more when they got it. To be honest, and I think he does have a plan B, but I feel often, like you say, of elite managers, they like to stick to their ways. I think they wouldn't see it as it wasn't working. I think Conte would have seen that game, and I probably agree with him, to be fair, in some ways. I think he would see that game as individual errors would cost us that. I'm not saying that's definitely right, because I think there are some aspects he could have changed. Like, I would have taken Sanchez, I would have brought Sanchez on for Tanganga just to add a bit of stability. I know people might not say, is that going to work with Sanchez's record either? But, yeah, I feel he wouldn't see it as his plan's gone wrong. I think Leicester, you're right, I think Leicester were very clever in that, for example, you think, I can't remember which goal it was, but it was one of the goals, Harry Kane was passed on the halfway line, and their centre-half, bang, was right on him straight away. And I think they played that to a T, because I think they must have identified, which you'd expect any team to do, they must have identified not seeing Romero in there and seeing the lack of technical ability in our back line, and I think they knew that they were going to get some joy out of exposing that. So I think they were just more aggressive and seemed to want it more than us. And that's ultimately what did it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that, and credit for Brendan Rodgers for that. Got a lot of criticism from especially Leicester fans, being their manager this season. At times they've gone through some dark periods, but I believe they're in a good place now, and they came here with a game plan, whether that's to mark Harry Kane out the game, to press high, whatever it was, they delivered it. And I do believe Conte was tactically outclassed. But again, I would probably put that down to that's very good, clever of Brendan Rodgers, and Brendan Rodgers done well. Quickly, Ben, because I do want to move on, because this show is mainly about Milan, which we will get on to. We're going to save the best, I think, still last. But final couple of questions, actually. One about Conte, one about the transfer window. One kind of links to the Conte and the team. First question is, I'm going to do it separately. First question is, do you think it's time to change formation?
No.
No?
No.
Fair enough.
I think the way I see it is, as much as people say, you should be adaptable, etc., as a manager, well, if the club are appointing Conte, and you've got an elite level manager that's won stuff everywhere he goes, should Conte change for Spurs, or should Spurs change in terms of buying players for Conte? When you appoint a manager that has got I wouldn't say it's difficult. You could argue Conte's system is a bit different in terms of, I'd say, typically in English football, particularly nowadays, is more of a 4 at the back system with a number 10, whereas Conte's doesn't exactly have that. It's more about the creativity coming from the wing backs, etc. I feel you could argue, is that going to take a bit longer because his system's a bit different? Yes, but people say go to a back 4, and people complain about, including myself sometimes, not having the wing backs. Obviously, we've now got Porro and we've got Perisic on that side, who on good form is good, but Perisic is not a fullback. So if we've got fullbacks, we've got Porro, fair enough, that could be brilliant. We've got Emerson. You've still got to play Emerson. I know some people say, he might be quite good as a fullback, but he's still got to get forward sometimes. And then left back, Perisic is not a left back. He's a wing, more of an attacking-based player. And then you've got Sessegnon, who's not... He's a decent player, but he's not good enough for what we want to be. So I feel the problem with that is people say, change formation. I don't see what's going to change, if I'm honest. And you say get a number 10 in, we don't have a number 10.
Yeah,
Don't have one at the club.
I'd probably say I agree with most of your points there, Ben. But again, another quick question for you. Well, I think the club would say that they went and got Conte a right wing back in Porro. So my question for you is, if Porro, for whatever reason, doesn't work out or doesn't turn out to be the right player, which is always a possibility can happen. From what I've seen, he's a good player, but obviously he's valued high. Let's say it doesn't work out for whatever different reason. Who would you blame for that?
I'd probably blame. I think there's a decent bit of blame that can be shared in a lot of places. I think I'm not the most. Don't get me wrong. I respect everything the club and the board have done off the pitch. Do I think mistakes have been made when it comes to on the field measures? I think there have been a lot of errors made, and Levy has come out and admitted that himself recently. But I don't buy some of the excuses he's given. But with regards to Porro, I think I don't think it won't work out. I think it will be a good signing. But I would argue it would be slightly on the whole keep changing a manager's situation that we have would be slightly to blame, because if obviously we don't know, we see bits of Porro, but we don't watch him every week for Sporting. We don't know every ounce of his game like we do with our current players. We don't really know until we've seen enough of him how good of a defender he is to know if he'd be good as a right back, not as a wing back. So I'd argue ultimately it would be on the board just because they've bought a player specifically for that position with Conte being the manager. And if he's then going to go in 6 months' time, then what was the point of that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I would, but some people would say put it on the fans because or me.
What, the pressure of the fans?
Yeah, wanted for a long while.
I can see that.
Yeah, completely understandable. I'd also like to touch on both sets of players took the knee on Saturday this weekend and will next weekend as well in support of the Premier League's No Room for Racism campaign. So quickly, I just wanted to remind people that will also take place.
I'm fully supportive of that. I think that's a great message. I feel they've done the right thing not doing it every week, because I feel if you do it every week, it starts to lose its effect. But I feel doing it at points in the season really reminds people of it. Put it that way.
Absolutely, yeah, it's an important movement, whichever way you look at it. So it's nice to see all players taking the knee. And now, what we've all been waiting for, the Milan versus Tottenham preview. The return of the Champions League is back tomorrow. So Ben, how are you feeling ahead of the game? Are you excited? Are you nervous? How are you feeling?
Apprehensive. Definitely apprehensive. I'm excited in some ways, but I'm also very nervous and very anxious inside. Before I carry on, Harry, I'll just let you know, and everybody watching, Liverpool have just gone 1-0 up against Everton.
All right. Oh, yeah, thank you.
But yeah, in terms of AC Milan, if Højbjerg wasn't suspended and we just hadn't had that Bentancur injury, if you look at AC Milan's form, I'd been very confident for the game. And with Romero coming back in as well, I'd been very confident for the game. And I would not fully expect us to win, but I would have expected us to get some sort of result out of the game. With a midfield, of all due respect, they've had great moments in their time. Sarr and Skip playing. Am I a lot more nervous about it than I was this time last week? Yes, I am a lot more nervous about it, particularly with the not lack of, I guess, inexperience in big games for the two of them in the San Siro in the round of 16 in the Champions League. It's a very hostile environment to throw them into in the deep end. But you've got to believe as a Spurs fan. If you don't believe with some hope, then what's the point? You've got to believe.
Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. And thank you for the score update, Ben. Hopefully Everton can come back. I think that would help us when Liverpool could potentially catch us. Apologies to any Liverpool fans in here, but hopefully Everton can come back. I can't see it, but hopefully, they do. I think you make very, valid points. Personally, I'm excited. I always am excited for the Champions League. That buzz, Champions League is always something different for me. but it's been moved. I wouldn't say ruined, but it's been perhaps brought back to reality a little bit by that Leicester game.
Definitely.
Going into, my mind's completely, sitting there thinking, we could win the Champions League now. I think us fans think we do get carried away. So I think this is a bit of a reminder about we've got, reminder that the owners we've got, the board we've got, and some of the players we've got. So I think we've been brought back down to earth personally a little bit. But Ben, question for you. Obviously, we've got Højbjerg suspended for Milan. Those yellow card suspension, I believe. You've got Bentancur, who's now injured out for the end of the season. Huge miss, beyond that Milan game. So I think there's two important players missing in that midfield. Obviously, now got Basuma out, who's now expected, as the goal broke before we came on, now 7 to 8 weeks. I mean, that's 2 months. That is a long time. In football, is quite a long time. That will feel like a long time. So obviously, we've got limited options. We've got Skip, you've got Sarr, you've got the possibility of Dyer playing in defensive midfield. You've got the possibility of the likes of Alfie Devine, perhaps bringing him into the first team and giving him a go. So, what midfield partnership would you go? I'm assuming you're going to go for a 2 as usual, assuming our problems in midfield. But would you go for what probably most fans would say in Skip or Sarr, or would you bring Dyer into defensive midfield, or maybe even call Alfie Devine, which is slightly more unpopular opinion, but it's always a possibility. What do you think? What would you do?
I would definitely pick Sarr and Skip. I'll be honest. As much as in some games, I rate Dyer sometimes. In some games, don't get me wrong, he can put in a good shift in at centre back, but games like the weekend make me think. And I'd never rated him as a midfielder. I'll be honest. I thought him moving to centre back is a much better move for him. As much as he sometimes has good games, sometimes has bad games, I would much prefer him at centre back than in midfield. So personally, no, I wouldn't put him in there. I would pick Sarr and Skip, mainly because I think there are any real options, if I'm brutally honest.
Yeah, do you know what, Ben? I agree with you. I would personally go with Skip and Sarr, which I think most fans would probably agree with us on. And quickly touch on Sarr. I think the games he's come in, like against Palace, like against Arsenal, I think he's been good. He didn't put foot wrong. For example, that Arsenal performance, I wouldn't say it was our worst performance of the year. I think that Leicester performance was worse. It wasn't great, we weren't great at all. But Sarr, I didn't think put foot wrong in that midfield. To be fair with you, I thought he got everything right. Passing neat, looked promising. So I actually look forward to seeing him play Tuesday. So, do you have confidence that Sarr, obviously it's a big step up but for him, but he did get thrown into the North London derby, and I think got, kind of like accepted the challenge and, filled up that expectation because there's also a big expectation, player filling in for. Are you excited for a start to see Sarr play tomorrow? And do you think he'll be able to live up to the expectation? Because he's set high standard now with a couple of good performances.
I wouldn't say I want to be excited, but if say we were playing a Premier League game at home against one of the lower league teams, no disrespect to any of the teams lower down the table, but if it was that, I'd be more excited to see it. But with it being AC Milan, the Champions League, I'm not saying he can't pull off a great performance, because he can. We've seen moments of brilliance from him. I'm sure he can pull it off. Am I confident in that happening? No. Do I think it's possible? Yes. But put it this way, am I going to look at that team sheet tomorrow, see Sarr and Skip and be thinking, we've got a good chance here? No.
Yeah, it's a good point, Ben. And we will get into predicted score near the end of the show. We are getting nearer, but we will get into that. Something I want to touch on, Ben. It's been an opinion of mine for a while, but I'm going to come out and say it more now. I'm going to say it to you here. Obviously, we've got Richarlison, right? So would you think, and what do you think of this idea of Richarlison playing in that number 9 role and Kane playing behind him, like in the point of the diamond, and like without the ball, making it 3 in midfield? Without the ball, Kane, Skip, Sarr, and obviously you got Sonny, you got Kulusevski, but I think dropping Kane behind Richarlison, I think he has the passing capabilities. I think he has just general capabilities to do that. Kane, keep the comments coming, guys, and let me know what you think about this. But Kane playing like at the point of the diamond behind Richarlison, so I think Richarlison is up there. I still think he's a fantastic striker compared to the Premier League. People talk about the Haalands, but Richarlison, I think, will offer something different. I'd like to see Kane playing in that number 10 role. Now, I mean, he's not getting any younger, is he? I would like to see that. Fantastic player. I think he'd be capable of that, and that would make a three midfield after that. So I want to know, firstly, Ben, what do you make of that idea? And, I mean, can you see Conte doing it? Because I can't, but, what do you think?
Do I think it's worth a go? Yes. Do I think it will happen and will Conte do it? I don't think it's unthinkable. I don't think it would never happen. But do I think it's going to happen? No. Do I think it's possible? Maybe one day. But I know you hear Conte say a lot that he says he thinks of Harry being a striker. He uses the phrase point of reference for the team a lot. And I see what he means in terms of, it's not just in terms of like references in, you could just boot it up to Harry Kane and he might be able to do something magical with it. I think it's more, it is, a lot of it is that, but it's also just the way from up front there he sets the play. He might pass it into midfield. Oh, got my camera. Might pass it into midfield, or he picks the ball up and sprays it X, Y, Z. So I feel with Richarlison coming in, it may take them Richarlison at striker, it may take them a bit of time to get used to it. So would I try it in a game like this? No. Would I be open to trying it in the future against a lesser opposition? Yes.
Yeah, Joe, it's a good question. Obviously, it's a big game to do it in. Before we get to predicted score, I'd like to touch on Milan's form. Milan go into this, I don't quite know the statistics, but they don't go into it, a bit like us, to be fair, not in great form. I believe that they're, again, guys, correct me wrong in the comments, but I believe there's something like fourth. I think it is Serie A. I think they're struggling for form. There's questions around the club at the moment. It's a similar position to us. So Milan's form, does that give you any more confidence, Ben, going into that game? Then Milan, probably like us, aren't in the best of the form, or do you just look at it and go, it's Milan, it's a big club, Champions League, it's always going to be hard and has no impact whatsoever. So how would you look at that?
I thought that a lot more before the injuries and suspensions. With the injuries and suspensions, not so much. Before that, I thought, we've got a really good chance here. I don't know if you heard, Harry, but AC Milan's midfielder Benasur is now injured as well, which is quite a blow for them for the game, which could then help us and not even it out, because I think the difference between us losing Højbjerg and Bentancur is going to be more than them losing one of their midfielders, because they've probably got better depth. But it could be worse, but it could be an awful lot better for us, if I'm brutally honest.
Yeah. Do you know, I think you've done that up perfectly. And finally, before we end the show, perfect way to end, I think, the predicted score for Milan. So I'll come to you first, Ben. What do you think the score will be tomorrow?
2-1, come on, you Spurs. 2-1.
2-1 Spurs, positive.
2-1 Spurs. You've got to believe, as a Spurs fan, you've got to believe. Come on, 2-1 Spurs.
You've got to believe. Yeah.
I think we're going to get a goal from Harry Kane, and Son's going to get back on the score sheet. Come on, you Spurs.
I like the positivity. Guys, let me know your score predictions in the comments. As you know, Ben, I'm not always the most positive Spurs fans, but Champions League gives me that bit of buzz. I'm not going to say we're going to win, but I don't think we're going to lose, because I do think that's mainly because my buzz of the Champions League. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm gonna be trying to balance in between what I actually think the scorers be and positivity. So I'm going in the middle, and I'm gonna go with a draw. I'm gonna go with 2-2. Actually, I think it'll be a high scoring game. I think it'd be all about the attacks. So I'm going 2-2, and Ben goes 2-1 Spurs, if I'm correct. That is our predicted score. And that brings us perfectly to the end of the show. So, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because it is free to do so. And if you liked it, leave a like. But before we go, thank you, Ben, for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. So before you go, Ben, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Spurs the Best on Twitter, is where you'll find me. Basically just complaining about Spurs or anything to do with football, basically. Thank you very much, Harry, for having me on. I'm sure we'll be doing this again.
Absolutely. You're welcome on anytime. Absolute pleasure to have you. That is where you can find Ben. You can find me there. I'm your host, Harry. You can find me at HarryScarf22. That is my Twitter Twitter handle. You can find me on all socials, and the founder of Scarfy Spurs Talk which is a fan channel, as you know, independent hub, transfer news, got future match reactions on. We've got more of these shows, we've got player ratings, so you've got a lot planned for the future. Yes, so go follow me. I'm your host, Harry, at HarryScarf22, and most importantly, go follow Scarfy Spurs Talk. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, come on you
Come
Spurs.
on, you Spurs.
Come on you Spurs, indeed.